Hi, I'm going to talk about Foucault's theories on panopticism and his how that relates to the way surveillance works in social media today. Um, to begin with, the panoptic prison is a design of a prison. It's designed in a way that the prison cells circle around a central tower, so the guards in the tower can see the prisoners at all times. Part of the principle is that the tower is designed in a way so prisoners do not really know if they're being watched at all. They don't know if the tower is being occupied at any time, and it's basically to give them the impression that it's possible that they may be watched at any time. The panopticism idea is it's sort of really based around an idea of centralized surveillance, which I think is sort of important with the internet supposedly encouraging like a sort of a dispersal of people and information. To sort of thrive, the idea of the panoptic prison or panoptic sort of surveillance really requires things to be sort of centralized so they can be watched with the level of detail required. It sort of doesn't make sense when we think about the internet because the internet is supposedly supposed to be very individual, very dispersed, and ultimately so big that it can't really be watched. But I don't think that's entirely the case. Part of the idea behind Foucault's writings and the ultimate idea of the panopticon involves the tower or the people that are doing the surveilling cannot be seen. The people that are being surveilled ultimately cannot really know that they are being watched at a specific time. It's more about the idea and the principle that there is the possibility they can be watched. It's being reinforced that you are really being watched all the time, regardless if you can physically see yourself being watched. Um, Foucault uses the quote in regards to from the perspective of the prisoners that he is seen but does not see. He is the object of information and never a subject in communication. On the flip side, he discusses the perspective of the person doing the surveilling as one that sees everything without actually being seen. This would be relevant to examples of modern media and social media because things like Facebook are designed as commercial products, particularly for the members of the public, in the sense that it's your public, private-ish lives, simply lives that are away from your professional persona. Um, Government or corporate intervention surveillance would then sort of place the public users of social media in the role of the prisoner being surveilled and the governments and corporations in positions of power, as would be the person in the towers. Part of the problem of the surveillance on social media is that because it's pretty much well established, I guess for the most part by an unwritten code of ethics, is that there is an understanding that what is shared on social networking is to be seen in a public sort of light between friends and family, but not particularly from your professional associations. So ultimately what people would share on social media is directly aimed to be for their friends. So therefore they don't have that sort of professional nature about them because it's not really supposed to be seen by their bosses or by government officials and whatnot. Ultimately, surveillance by the members of public is something that is possibly seen as acceptable because that's part and parcel of how social media works. Like, for example, if I was to share something on Facebook, I share it with the sort of comfort knowing that what is on here will be seen by the average Joe that is looking at it through the lens of themselves as a public person. Like, part of the user experience of Facebook and social media in general is that you're sharing things on a public social level, which means that even if it's not someone that is particularly your friend but would come across your Facebook profile, even as a matter of surveillance, like you're looking at people's pages, um, it's there with the intentions of being social, of being on that social level. It's not particularly things that are professional. For example, they'd also be weighing things about your person, like your interests, your tastes and associations for things. Whereas surveillance from a professional or a government level would be things like evaluating you as a person. Has this person done anything wrong? Is there anything suspicious about them in relation to the law if it's government? Or things like, is this person hireable? Does this person have qualities? But ultimately on Facebook is that people aren't going to share that sort of information. So surveillance can be disparaging from the position of a professional, because if someone were to post photos of themselves partying or whatnot, that's not going to look good in the eyes of a professional. But part of the point of Facebook is that it's not there for the professional. So therefore that sort of surveillance, while it is very easy, can be very uncomfortable for people that use social media. An example of this is in The Age. There was an article about a man in the United States that went into a job interview. I think it was possibly for a government related position, but his employer asked him to surrender his Facebook login information so they could look at his Facebook. Ultimately, he declined to do that and, withdrew himself from the interview and the application process. Historically, a person that worked would come into the understanding that they were being surveilled, because that's where the separation between their professional and their personal lives, the private and public is that they would go into their jobs with the understanding that they were out in public, they were likely to be surveilled, and then when they would go home, they would go back to their private lives with the reassurance that their actions were not being surveilled and ultimately didn't affect their public professional lives. Lyon suggests in his book that that's changed. Previously, people were able to go back to their homes as like a private haven. These days, with the advent of technology and surveillance on the internet, is that the home is no longer a private haven because the technology comes with them. Even if it's not that intention, if the intentions have changed, like I mentioned earlier,